In this video, we're going to be showing you guys how to put on a scope the right way so that it doesn't cause you problems later. First, let's go over all the parts. This is your gun. A lot of them will have a top rail up here on top. Then you're going to have scope rings. You'll usually have 2 of these. We have 2 of them right here. And then you're going to have your scope. You're going to need all these pieces to put it on. But let's go ahead and start with the first thing. I like to have my gun in some kind of thing that can hold it for me. If you have one of these, that's great. If not, maybe you grab a pillow, some hoodies, a quilt, a box, just something that you can lay the gun on so that it generally is sitting up like this and not on its side. And if it's on your side, that's fine too. You can even hit them with one of these right here if you need to. That way it's pretty well upright. You can work on it and do everything you need. But for this, we're going to be putting mine right there. Now what I like to do is I like to go ahead and take your scope rings and I like to put them on first. Now with this, you may be saying, well, how far do you put them front and back? And that kind of depends on your scope. So you can kind of throw it up there, kind of see where it goes. For this one, I'm pretty sure I can put it right here on this middle one. And then for this back one, it looks like I can choose either one of the slots. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it on. Now these particular ones has this little screw right here. But a lot of them will actually have Allen keys like these or star keys where you stick it in and you can twist it like that. And sometimes it'll have 2 of them. But a question you may have is if yours looks like this, which side does this part go on? And I would say it doesn't matter that much, but I like to have mine on the other side of the action because sometimes if those little bolts are too big, as you go to rack a shell, it could come out and hit the little knob thing, and that could bounce back and cause issues if it hits it. But if it doesn't hit it, it probably doesn't matter. I'm going to grab some pliers. If it has a little Allen head, just go ahead and twist it to where it's pretty tight. You don't have to crank it forever because you'll strip the screws depending on how strong they are. But for these, I'm just going to take some pliers and just barely, I'm going to hand tighten it and then just do a little bit more than hand tight with this. So that right there is good. Nothing too crazy. Just pretty tight on there. From there, with your scope rings, you probably have a little wrench like this. Just go ahead and undo the screws, lefty-loosey. And you can go ahead and pull the top off of these things. So, should go twist a little bit more. And now that comes out and it's a little half moon thing. I'll do that for both of them. And this is how we're going to get started. This is the base of putting the scope on. Then you're going to pull up your scope. Now, it does look like it could go either way, but there is a way that you need to go. You need to go top is the top, and the right side is the one with the knob. Some of them will have knobs on both sides, but you can also sometimes look through the reticle, and depending on the reticle you have, you can actually tell. As we look through this reticle, you can see it has little hash marks on the bottom. That's another way we know it's on the bottom. But for this scope, it's going to be oriented this way. So I'll go ahead and just lay those in there. Another thing, if you're about to buy rings, you got to know the tube diameter right here. They come in everything from 1 inch to 30 millimeters, 34 millimeters are some popular ones. You got to make sure that the rings you buy fit the tube size of your scope. So this one, I believe, is 1 inch. So it fits pretty perfectly. Now here's another important part. You probably know that you want it to be straight up and down. You want it to be as level as possible. But another question is how far or back, and does that matter? And I think it matters a lot because you want it to have the perfect sight picture every time when you shoulder it. But before we get into that, let me show you what the perfect sight picture actually looks like. Alright, so let's look at the target. This is pretty well perfect. You can see how the entire scope housing is being taken up by space. If you get too close, you can see it's kind of got that little circle within the circle. And if you get too far away, you can see how easy it is to actually get interference, I guess. You want to be that perfect amount to where whenever you look down the scope, you can move a little bit, but it still takes up the right picture. That is what you're looking for. So the way you find that is you go ahead and shoulder it up, just like you're about to shoot it. And I would even go ahead and close my eyes. And then get right where you want it to be, and then open your eyes. And then you can push the scope further away or closer to you to get it right in that sweet spot. For me, the sweet spot's going to be right about there. So I'm pretty happy with that. So from here, you found out how frontwards or backwards it should be. Now we want to make sure it's as level as possible. You can come out with some pretty special levels. I usually just eyeball it. But I do look at a couple things to try to make sure it's all good. And before we even start twisting too much, you can even take these scope rings and go ahead and get them started. You don't want to tighten them up all the way because you still have a little bit of adjustment to go. But I will go ahead and I will put them on. So just put them on top and then I'll twist them handful of turns, not to get tight, but I'll go ahead and make sure they don't come off. That's going to add a little more tension to the scope anyways. That way I don't twist it too much accidentally. And then here in a minute, I'll talk about how tight to tighten these. All right, so now those are on. They're not going anywhere. You just want to look down your scope. You want to try to maybe level up your gun as much as you can, just eyeballing it. But then also, as you come up to the top of the scope, you can also twist it and kind of just eyeball it relative to the gun itself. And you just want this thing to be as level as possible. I'm looking at the gun. The gun looks pretty level. I'm looking at the top of the scope. I'll even look at the top of this little capper here. Try to make sure that it seems pretty level. So that looks pretty level. And then, give or take, that seems pretty level too. So it doesn't have to be exact, but the closer you can get it, the less aggravating it'll be later. From here, say you got front and back situated. You have level rounding situated. Now we're just going to go ahead and tighten these down. And you kind of want to do it in a pattern. You don't want to tighten this one up all the way, then this one all the way, then this one all the way, then this one all the way. You want them to have even pressure. That way it's kind of pulling on all sides. So I'm going to go ahead and pull them all until they get kind of tight, to just barely tight. And then I'm going to switch over to this one, make sure it gets barely tight. And then I'll switch to this and make sure it gets barely tight. And then I'll switch over to this and make sure it's barely tight. There's going to be a little gap right here in between the ring. You want that gap to be the same on all four sides. That way it's not one end's really shut and one end's wide open. That's just uneven pressure. And a lot of them will actually have two screws on each side. And that way you want to tighten it a little bit, tighten it a little bit, tighten it a little bit, tighten it a little bit. That way it just evens the pressure pulling down on the scope instead of all the pressure being on one corner. So I'm just going to do that. Tighten it a little bit, not too much. Come back around. Tighten this other side till it feels about even. I'm even going to loosen this one up a little bit because I feel like it went a little too much. And then I'm going to come back on this side and tighten it down. So now both sides have about an even gap. And I'm going to go ahead and do this back ring the same way, just by hand tightening it. And then go ahead and hand tighten it this way. Because your hands can only tighten it so much. Tighten it and then tighten it. And this is just so that you're not over torquing it, because if you over torquing it, it could strip these screws or it could strip the threadings in the screws. Then once you get it on there hand tight like this, you can go ahead and turn it sideways. You'll get a little more leverage, and then you don't have to go very much more. You don't want to go very much more than hand tight with it turned sideways. As long as it's pretty tight, it probably ain't going to come undone. Like that right there, that's not a big deal, but you don't want to do that so hard that it starts bending out the tools or stripping the screw stuff. But boom, I think that's pretty much it. This scope is mounted and ready to go. Here's something important though. Just because you put a scope on the gun does not mean it's sighted in. And even if you take your gun and your scope to a gun shop and they say they bore sighted the gun, that doesn't mean it's sighted in to hunt with. So if you just put a scope on a new gun and you want to learn how to sight it in, click right over here for how to sight in a scope. Or if you're looking to learn more about how to shoot a bolt action rifle, click right over here. Solid.